You need to have hours in the 77 that go towards building the business, towards simplifying the business, and towards, of course, serving in the business, right? Good morning and welcome to our Clients Over Chaos weekly training. I'm super excited to have you here. And if you can see me and hear me, let me know. Just say hello in the chat, wherever you happen to be watching this. And if you want to be in the group chat to say good morning to me and everything, make sure you go to next5clients.com to join our Clients Over Chaos free community, where you can get access to this training and all of the others that we have in our library, helping you get more clients with less overwhelm and less headache. So I'm really excited to have you here. And I've been working on our presentation today all about how to scale a coaching business. Now, I used to think that scaling was something that people needed to work on later, that was going to be something that helped people, like, you have to be successful first and then you learn how to scale. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. I got distracted here because I'm trying to go live with some streaming software and it seems to not be exactly working, but that's okay. Well, hello all. I'm so glad you're here. We got Debbie in the house, Lynn in the house. Awesome. Well, y'all, let me unpack this whole brand conversation for you. Because like I said, I thought it was something that you do after you're fancy, after you've already figured things out, after you've already made your millions of dollars, then you think about how you're going to scale the business. And actually, the best time to start thinking about scaling is at the very beginning. So whether you have never had a client before, or you've had a few clients, but it's kind of like start and stop, and it doesn't have like a continuous stream, then this is going to be a great presentation for you today. So before we dive like way deep into it, and I am officially giving up on the gram for the live stream right now because I thought it was going to work and it's not going to work. And I took Instagram off of my phone, so I'm going to have to figure it out next week. All right. What can I tell you about this? So I'm going to try one more thing, you guys. Sorry about this. Oh my word. Okay. It's just not going to work. I'm going to close it. All right. So let's talk about what scaling actually is. So when I looked up the dictionary definition of scaling, here's what it said. It said that it's a growing revenue without costs and effort increasing at the same rate. I don't know about you, but that didn't mean a lot to me, especially when I was at the very beginning. I'm like, what revenue? I had very little revenue. Our definition for today is to build a real sustainable coaching or expert business model that lets you help more people without working more hours. Right? So let me know if that makes a lot of sense. And for our conversation today, scaling does not mean blowing up overnight. It doesn't mean getting thousands of clients that you can't handle and that you're completely overwhelmed and crushed by your business. Scaling means building a legitimate, repeatable business that grows in a way that's sustainable. I keep using the words sustainable, but simple and not dependent on you working more hours. So let's bust the myth that building your business or growing your business automatically means that you're doing more. It does not. It does not mean that you're launching like another program. It doesn't mean that you have to do something other than coaching. It doesn't mean that you have to hustle harder and just want it more. I'm personally just super sick of that messaging. Let me just drop a Y in the chat if you're with me on this. Like, just this messaging that like, well, if you just really wanted it, you would just do more. It turns out that there's actually a lot of real obstacles, like real actual obstacles that prevent people from getting the result that they're really after. And the reason why you don't have the results that you're after is going to be actually really unique to every person. So like, I know this is going to sound like a complete confessional here, but I have results that I am not happy with. Me, Amanda Kaufman, right? I've got awards on the wall. I've been on incredible stages. I've done like all these things. And yet I still have goals that I'm like, we're not getting there fast enough, Captain. We're not doing as well as we want to do. And like, I don't care if you're, again, getting ready for that first client or if you've had a few clients and it's just kind of start and stop and start and stop. Every one of us, every human, even the most successful people, like I'm thinking about the captains of industry, all of them have unmet objectives. All of them have unmet goals. So, in our conversation about scaling today, I don't want you to do the thing that I did for years, which was I said, fancy people deserve more than I do. We got to break up with that mindset. And instead, today, we're going to talk about the actionable some things that you can do to build your business, that it is something that actually gives back to you. It's not just this endless pour in with no return. It's something that you're really proud of creating. It's not something that you're ashamed to talk about. It's something that you have like genuine pride over. And that's really my mission today in our conversation. But first, like, let's let go of this idea that you're only worthy if you're a 7-figure coach. I got to tell you something. As I got to the 7-figure coach level, then I found out that actually you want to be a multi 7-figure coach. And actually, there's like a lot of problems that 7-figure coaches run into that you don't even have to think about when you're in the beginning stages. And this really destroyed one of the ideas that I'd been carrying around for a long time, which is when I get there, then I'll be better. When I get there, then everything will be perfect. When I get there, then I call this when then thinking, right? Like when you delude yourself into thinking like, when I get there, then everything will be better. Let me tell you something. Some things will actually be better. Some things will actually be better. Like me learning how to sell something intangible like coaching changed my life, right? It really did actually make things a lot better because I was able to create opportunities and options that were not previously available to me. Shout out Y in the chat if you totally understand that, like, yes, mastery of a skill, it's like you can't unlearn it and it's totally better. But guess what? When I got into actually selling proactively, new things came up, new challenges, new issues, new dilemmas. For example, when I started really selling at a higher rate, I was like, oh my God, I don't have as much time to sell and as much time to fulfill as I wanted to have. So I was running into all these challenges with my fulfillment, and like, oh my God, I never want to do a bad job by a client. And also, like, I'm human too. So I would be so exhausted and just like clawing into continuing to show up as best as I could. So I had to shift and change things even as I learned the skill to get better and more streamlined in what I was doing. And what I've realized over the years is that you never stop that. Right? Because you keep developing new capabilities, but you never get out of this place where you never have a challenge. All you do is you create new, more interesting problems. And, Dean Graziosi said this to me years ago while I was in one of his masterminds, and I loved it so much. He said, just pick bigger problems, right? You're going to have problems in your life. Pick bigger problems. And I was like, dang, that's so true. Yeah, so let's see. We've got some commentary from the community. I'm loving this. It's yes, X is easier than 2X, 1,000%. So like tackle those bigger problems. So when we talk about scaling today, I'm going to share with you like 3 main things that I help people with all the time when it comes to being able to generate more revenue with less cost. And honestly, like the whole thing starts with simplifying. My motto is do what matters. So DWM in the chat if you agree. Like it's about focus. It's about focusing on what truly and authentically matters. And I think the hardest thing in life is the discernment of like all the things that everybody wants to make important to you, and then you actually being able to get quiet and calm and identify this is what's important to me. And, when I'm working with experts and coaches, it's like service to other people is super important, but you cannot serve everyone perfectly all the time for free. That's a utopia that doesn't exist. The reality is that you are limited to the number of hours that you have in a week. And this has been one of the grandest frustrations of my career is like, there's just never enough time. And have you ever actually done the math on how much time you actually have every week? I was actually doing this with some of my clients in the Experts Network, and I broke the math down for them. So check this out. You have 168 hours in a week. And if we take out 56 hours for sleeping, that's 7 hours a night, right? Or 8 hours a night, excuse me, 56 hours taken out of the 168. Now we're at 121 or something close to that. Then you take out an hour for getting pretty, doing your makeup, doing all those kinds of things, drinking water and having a good morning. A 1 hour, that's 7 more hours out of your calendar. Then we've got an hour for every meal. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, let's just say on average. So that's 3 hours a day. That's 21 hours a week. And let's just say that you're going to spend an hour a day in movement. It could be yoga, it could be going for a walk, it could be heavy weights. I don't care what it is. It's just like an hour a day. So that's 7 more hours. Math in the math, grand total, 77 hours of freedom. 7 hours of freedom. Shout out 77 in the chat. When it comes to scaling, it's respecting the 77. Woo! Oh my God, that's what it's really about. It's respecting your 77. Because guess what? As a mom, 77 hours, I'm like, well, there's some of that time that's just going to be sitting with my son, asking him what he learned today. Lately, he has me bumbling through Spanish. Or maybe it's sitting with my other son and talking about Dungeons and Dragons. So much Dungeons and Dragons, but like hours go to that. And same with like dates with my husband. He makes me bread. He makes me meals. He keeps our house running. He leads the kids through school because we homeschool. So like, I need to give him time as well. So your reality is that your 77 is shared with all the roles that you play. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're a coach, you need to have hours in the 77 that go towards building the business, towards simplifying the business, and towards, of course, serving in the business, right? So I used to think like I can just carry 20 one-on-one clients. No, you can't. Because you're going to have to continue to market. You're going to have to continue to sell. You're going to have to continue to be compliant. So that means doing like irritating things like bookkeeping and taxes. You're going to have to show up with full force in a lot of different things. So to make today's training a little easier, I'm actually going to share my screen. And if you are like following along on a live stream and you don't see what the heck I'm sharing, make sure you join us in Clients Over Chaos. Go to nextnumber5clients.com to join us here. But here's my whiteboard. Okay, so if you think this is fancy pants, shout out fancy in the chat because I felt like this was pretty fancy. I'm going to walk you through 3 paths to scaling a coaching business the smart way. All right. But the first thing is we've got to understand what a coaching business model actually is. Because you can't scale something if you don't know what it is. Fair, right? So the first thing, I've been teaching this for years. It's meet, talk, fit, coach. And if you don't have my book on coaching leads to clients made easy, then you definitely want to check that out. And I believe, let me just drop the link in the chat for our Clients Over Chaos community. If you don't have it, make sure you grab it. Where the heck did I put it? Oh no, I don't do it that way. I have a text expander. That's why. There we go. All right. So there's the book. So if you already have it, just go to login.thecoachesplaza.com and that's where you're going to find your book. Okay, so 3 paths to scaling a coaching business. It's meeting people, talking to people, fitting with people, coaching the people. Okay, but what does that really mean? Meeting people. This is the visibility. Okay, and I just realized this looks kind of small, so I'm going to make these a little bigger. There we go. Look at that. Real time. Okay, so visibility. What's visibility? Visibility is getting attention and it's nailing the first impression. Okay, so shout out 1 in the chat if you're with me. Meeting people means visibility. Visibility means getting attention and gaining a first impression. Okay, this is non-negotiable. And we're going to talk about it more in a second. I'm going to walk through the gray boxes in a bit, but first let's go through the pink. So the second is talking to people. Oh my word. So a few years ago, I launched a coaching program that taught people how to use advertising to build a list. And when I tell you that 85% of the people that 100% of the people took the course, 85% finished the program, which when you compare this to like mass marketed programs, maybe 5% of the people that buy stuff actually open the program and complete it. We had an 85% completion rate, which is just bananas. Because the completion rate was so high, I had a lot of people building lists, but guess what? They never talked to the people on the list. They didn't send emails. They let their emails go cold. They never smiled and dialed for people that they have phone numbers for. They never reached out on DM. They didn't say, hi, nice to meet you. What's you about? Who are you? They took no interest in the people that were joining the list and they were not of service. And that was such a disappointing outcome for that program because I was just like, oh my God, you literally have the audience. You nailed meeting people. But then when it came to keeping the rhythm going with talking to people, it fell apart. Okay. So the reason that's such an important thing is that people won't buy from you if they don't know, like, and trust you, if they're not connected to you, if they think that you're just some spammer and some scammer who just like is their first impression. Look, on online marketing, it's easier if you just assume that the first impression is that they think you're spamming. It's easier if you just remember that like their first impression is that you probably have something to sell. Don't hide it, okay? But what we can do is we can add to it connection. We can demonstrate our trustworthiness. We can show our alignment. That's what we can do. Shout a 2 in the chat if you're understanding that connection is the secret missing ingredient for most people that figure out visibility. They don't know how to do the connection part. And that's why they don't get to do the fit part, which is the conversion. This is where you actually get paid money, honey. So this is where you're getting people to actually commit. So it could be committing to joining you on a one-on-one call or a group call, but they're literally making time in their schedule to talk to you. This is another thing that I notice a lot of people really struggle with because they're not being reverent enough for the commitment, right? They're too available. They don't recognize that the availability that other people are giving you is incredibly valuable, and they are not running a process through the conversion, and they're just hoping that people will buy. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a second, but when it's done right, you have a predictable process by which people will buy. You have a predictable process, okay? And one of my mentors said, and I love this, he said, if you don't have a process for people buying from you, prepare to receive their process from putting it off. And I was like, whoo-wee. You know all those objections everybody always talks about? It's like overcoming objections. What that is the opposite of a sales process. That's the not gonna buy process. When you get an objection, that's the person across the table giving you the I don't want to buy process. And so how you handle their I don't want to buy process really, really matters. Shout a 3 in the chat if you know how important it is to run a sales process that does not suck, right? Like it's got to be good. All right. Last piece of the model is we've got to actually coach. So remember, it's so funny, but when I look back on the seasons where I was at the most risk of a cash flow problem or I was having the greatest difficulty, it was almost always because I was overcommitted in delivery. I had too many clients. I had too many commitments. I had too many things that I needed to keep my promises with. And because of that, I was struggling to make the time for the other 3 parts of the model. So delivery and retention means like that's where your client is accessing next level results. That's where they're getting a return on their investment of time, money, and energy. This is where you shine. This is where you get retention. This is where making your marketing and sales so much easier because your clients will remain your clients. They'll stay in connection. They'll want to stay. So it actually reduces the burden of marketing and sales if you do a really good job of delivery, which is the coaching. And I say delivery and retention because this is where you might ascend, which means they move up to the next level program, or retain and stay in the program you're in on extension, or they might even descend. So I've had clients who, for example, went through a coaching program with me, and then they stay in membership because they want to stay close, but they're happy with what they've accomplished in the coaching program. So you can go up, sideways, or down. And then the worst thing, of course, is that it's the end of the road, right? It's the end of the relationship. So yeah, let's talk about the gray boxes real quick, because this is where scaling kind of falls apart. But before we do, you all got number 4, shout out 4 in the chat if you're like, got it, delivery and retention. That's where we deliver results. That's where our biggest concern is making sure our clients are getting an ROI on their time, money, and energy, right? I hope this is making so much sense and landing. So number 4, if you really got that. All right, so the gray boxes. These are the biggest obstacles to scaling. And I'm going to tell you what the obstacles are up front. So then when I tell you what the solutions are behind doors number 1, number 2, and number 3, it's going to make a huge amount of sense. Okay, cool. So for number 1, the number 1 reason why people don't have a lot of attention, they're not establishing a first impression, it's because they're letting their feelings run their business, and they feel embarrassed, they feel nervous, they feel worried. And so they engage in secrecy. And secret coaches don't succeed, right? Don't be a secret. Loud, proud, happy, confident. That's the vibe. That's what we want. But what most coaches do is, even though they've got incredible skill and they have so much great intention and they want to have huge impact and they're inspired, they have trouble activating that leadership of being visible. Okay? So shout one again, I guess. We're just going to cycle through. If you hear me loud and clear, that the biggest enemy to visibility is secrecy. It's the biggest enemy. So in other trainings, we've talked about how to have more brand presence, and we've talked about how to have more visibility, but you've got to get out of the secrecy. Okay. So don't keep it a secret. And I was thinking about this morning. I was like, what's the best way to start building that muscle? Because like the reason that you're being secretive, and this was me too, is because you've been rewarded for being meek, mild, humble, like you've gotten something out of it. So to activate your inner extrovert and to activate your outer presence, I would start with this one question. Here's your coachy question. Have you told your best friend? Have you told your best friend what you're building, right? Just let me know, BFY, if you've told your best friend. Put BFN in the chat if you haven't told your best friend yet what you're building and why it's so important, okay? So start with your besties. Next up, oh yeah, everybody did. Okay, great. So the next layer out is, have you told your family and friends, even the people that will have a criticism for you? Have you told your family and friends? Okay, cool. You have. All right. Next level. Have you shown up in your community locally to declare yourself? Meaning, do you go regularly to networking events? Do you leave your house? Do you go to conferences? Do you go to seminars? Next one, have you updated your social profiles to loudly and proudly declare your services are available? Have you done that? So that's there we go, Debbie. That's your next step, right? That's your next step. So that's updating your LinkedIn, that's updating your Facebook, that's updating your Instagram. Okay, next level. Have you joined a mastermind or a coaching program or a community where you've worked with a mentor? Right? Because a lot of times we're being really secretive about what we're doing. And what we actually need is we need to build a lot of champions around it. Okay. So the next one is connection, talking. The reason that most people really struggle with this is, number one, they don't do it, right? So let's just assume you're doing it. But the reason it's not working is because it's selfish content. It's me-focused content. Now, this is a really easy mistake to make, okay? And I've done it. It's a really easy one. And that's where you're talking about things that are more important to you than to your client. And that's, and here's some of the the detections that I use to figure out, like, is the issue the content that they're posting? If you're posting a lot of content and you don't get any hearts, likes, or comments or responses, or in your day-to-day conversations, if you're not getting people saying, wow, I loved your post, or wow, I've loved what you've been doing on social media. Like, if you're not getting any compliments or feedback, but you're doing it, then there's a very good chance of it being focused on you, not on the service to your client. And another big tell, and this is how I can usually diagnose this as a business coach, is if you are telling your coach that the problem is your audience, or if you're telling your coach that the problem is somebody else, then your content is probably not focused on them yet, right? And so this might sound like blaming. My person, they just don't know that they need it. They just can't understand. They just have mixed up priorities. I can't get them to focus on what's important. Then that means you're doing me-focused content, right? Content's not really valuable until someone else says that it is. And like, that's the hardest thing to figure out, is like, how do I do content that other people would actually play with, like would actually want to be seen, engaged with? And that's like really, really tough. Yeah, it can't be true that your client is incapable of understanding you. Because even if that is true, I mean, then we have no recourse, right? Like we can't do anything about that. If instead we are like, okay, they're focused here, and so I'm going to meet them there, and I'm going to build my content right there. And then because I've built connection, then I can lead them to deeper conversations on the other stuff. But if I don't establish trust on the front, then they're not going to trust me with the challenging stuff, right? And this is where most coaches try to shortcut their content. They just try to like say, blurt, here's the answer. And they're not leading people to the conclusion by meeting people where they actually are. Okay, next one. Let's say you're having conversations with people and people want to get on your calendar, but you still don't have any sales. The number one reason is you have what I call a no-worthy offer. A no-worthy offer. So what the heck does that mean? It means that if you're getting the objections and when you counter, they're just like counter with a resolution, excuse me, and they still say no, and you actually have a good sales process, it's probably that your offer is not yet a no-brainer yes. So we're after a no-brainer yes. We're not after a no-worthy offer. And most coaching offers are no-worthy. Oh my God, you want me to spend how much time on that? Oh my word, I'm going to have to change that much? I'm not even sure the goal's important anymore. Never mind, right? So it ends up being like no-worthy. And here's the rudest truth of all is you're probably going to have a lot of no-worthy offers until you figure out your yes. Right? What is the yes that flows? What's the yes that'll close even with your eyes closed? What's the yes that makes people literally want to throw a credit card at your face? Right? Like those are the offers that make the biggest difference. And I got to tell you, like, selling somebody that they need to spend a bunch of time on something is a no-worthy offer, right? Everybody's busy. Why would they want to do that? So we've got to shift it to talk about the transformation and how effective it's going to be and how the outcome is going to be so delicious that you can't say no. All right, last one, broken promises. Broken promises. So for delivery and retention, the biggest issue you're going to have and the biggest reason people are not going to continue with you is because you were late. It's because you weren't fully present when you were actually doing your thing. It's because you weren't listening to the challenge that came up and giving them a meaningful solution to be able to do it. And again, that's probably because of presence, and it's probably because it could be because of training. So sometimes a little bit of training on coaching can make a big, big difference. But really, like most coaches I've met don't really have a delivery problem, but they might have a promise and commitment problem. Okay. So if you've ever said, I'm a commitment phobe, right, then that is that's something to work on with your coach because you want to be somebody who honors your promises. That's one of the biggest things in terms of getting results and ROI for your people. Okie dokie. So how do we actually build and scale a business? Well, the first thing is we want to start building group programming as soon as you've got your first 5 clients. Okay, so there's no textbook that says that thou shalt work privately before thou shalt build a group program. But I will tell you this, your scaling is going to be limited by your willingness to work with groups. So this means working on your leadership. This means working on your clarity about the process that you take people through and codifying that into a real curriculum so that you're coaching and you're flexible, but you still have a roadmap. You still have the step-by-step that people do. So if y'all just saw the roadmap that I walked you through in this very training, how helpful was that to know the sequence, the order, the pitfalls, the things that we need to do, right? You can tell me it was unhelpful, or you can tell me it was so helpful, right? But the group programming is really just taking what you know and organizing it in a way that people can access on self-study terms, that they can go even deeper with it. Exactly. So when you learn to speak group, it gives you the leverage to be able to grow your business. The second big thing is actually digital products. So, for example, I've sold multiple copies of my book in the last few days. I've sold courses. The whole idea with digital products is just taking what's in your brain and moving it into self-study environment so that people can do things on their term and not always on the calendar. And here's the big secret that like I missed for a minute. I used to worry about like, do I have a pipeline? Do I have enough people that I can actually sell to? Let me just ask you this. Is somebody more likely to buy from you who bought your book or somebody, okay, so option one is they bought your book or they bought a little mini course or they paid a ticket into an event, but they gave you $1 versus a stranger on the internet who's never surrendered $1 or focus. If you have only 77 hours of freedom, are you going after person A who spent $1 with you previously, or are you going after person B? And y'all, when I tell you I spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars in masterminds before it struck me, like I got struck with the duh stick of like, oh my God, these big companies that are selling masterminds, like they literally don't even talk to someone who hasn't given them $1. They literally don't actually call. And I was just like, so we build the leads so we can get the leads to buy a ticket, buy a book, buy a mini course, buy a template stack. We get them to buy something, and then those people are the ones that we work to get to know better. And that was a revelation, right? That actually was one of the biggest scaling moments of my life, was realizing, oh my God, I'm spending all this time trying to take a complete stranger and turn them into a client when I can go stranger to customer, customer to client, right? Yeah. Person A. Yes. Ooh. I love this. So Debbie asked a great question. She said, in my beta, I found everyone wanted different things. Find the common thing, right? Find the common ground. So I'll give you a really good example of how I do this, actually, Debbie. I have people who are building like a financial business, right? A financial coaching business. And I've got people who are doing self-love, and I've got people who do grief, and I've got people who are teaching teachers, and I've got people who, right? Like they all have like very different outcomes. So here's what I don't do. I don't create my process to be like, okay, here's my program for teachers. Here's my program for grief specialists. Here's my program for women coaches. Because I don't need to do that. They all have the same problem that can be solved in the same way. They need to do research. They need to run tests. They need to run through my MTFC. I've built a standardized process for the thing that everybody had the most in common. If you get in the game of chasing everyone for all their details and nuance and then tell yourself the story that there's no standardization, then you're going to continue to run into challenges and issues. So the way this could look just very generically is that most coaching business most expert programs need to start with clarity of purpose. So step one is, what is their goal? So instead of your process being like, let me do your goal for you, it's how do you get a person to articulate their goal? The second thing is probably real analysis. So what's going on for real in their particular thing? So your process is, how do I get them to do this analysis? It's not, how do I customize this for everybody's unique situation, right? And then after you've got the analysis, the next thing is going to be setting the plan. So I would really strongly encourage you that when you're recruiting into a group, you don't recruit people that have completely different objectives. You find the common ground and the common process that you're all going to follow. Then in the coaching calls, that's where you do the distinctions, and that's where you can solve particular problems, right? And the results will be different. I have, oh my word. Okay. So if you're not in the Experts Network, you should be in the Experts Network, because I can coach you through this in a lot more specificity in like a real call. However, or even the First 5 Club, just like make sure you come to the First 5 Club meetings, because the results are going to vary always, because you can't control every factor. So We are building to an average. We're building for the average case, and we're building for excellence in average. And some people are going to knock it way out of the park and they're going to get outsized, incredible results. And you're going to learn from those people. And there's going to be some people that it's like, you could show up to their house every day, banging a pot and pan saying, focus on the thing. And they won't, because they've got too many other competing priorities and challenges. And everybody has a different set of skills and experience as well. So as a coach, don't hold yourself to the standard that everybody has to have a perfect outcome. That's never, ever going to happen. But what you can do is you can aim at raising the average. Which brings me to the final thing behind door number 3, which is you need systems. You need automation, right? Systems and automation don't do as well with high levels of variability. If every time you're talking to people, it's like on a completely different set of subjects, it's really, really hard. And I did build a multi-6-figure business with very little system because I was totally overwhelmed by all the systems options. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to as many networking events as I can identify. I'm going to, go to whatever masterminds and conferences that I want to go to. And if somebody has a pulse and a problem, I'm their coach, right? And so that was, on one hand, a really interesting season because it meant that I coached a lot of people across a lot of different transformations and a lot of different personalities and a lot of, there was just like a high variability. I did everything from couples coaching, to financial, to divorce. That was an interesting one. To like team leadership, to career change. Like I was literally coaching. Like I said, if you have a problem and a pulse, I'm your coach. And that meant that I had 635 meetings for free with people that year to get about 20 closes, 20 clients. And that's about a 3% conversion for 635 hours. It was just horribly inefficient. Like the only thing that was really efficient about that process is I had like a first meeting and a second meeting, and then that worked. But I got to tell you, like that first year was such a brute force year. And what changed everything is when I said, you know what, I'm going to take coaches from feeling like a hot mess to having an organized system and approach. And that was the very beginnings of the Coaches Plaza brand. And things have gotten easier every year because I've gotten even clearer about the exact transformation and the particular thing that I'm solving for people and the best way to do it. And I've gotten a huge range of results. I've gotten, some clients that have made literal $1 million because of my coaching. And I've got many people who ended up quitting coaching. So I've had like a whole gamut of results. But what I know is that the system is improving every single year as I get better as a practitioner and as I stay really focused. Systems have also allowed me to do onboarding super slickly. So as soon as somebody pays me, it's like the system takes over. They have videos that walk them through how to do everything. They have meetings getting scheduled. They have like the whole thing. It's literally they pay and onboarding happens as far as I'm concerned. I don't have a big to-do list. In terms of follow-up, I heard this the other day and I was just like, yes, I love this. I think it was Molly Mahoney that said it. She says, don't automate the relationship, automate the reminder to stay in relationship. And I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I do in my systems is I'm using it to help me with follow-up. Same thing with lead generation. I've been doing a lot more speaking engagements lately, and I've set up a pretty sick lead system that is just awesome, right? Where I give an awesome, friendly gift, and in exchange, I get their contact information, and then we have a conversation that is largely automated until it moves into being more of a one-on-one interaction, which is just incredible. And then the last place that I've been using systems and automation a lot is because of visibility. So it helps me research what I'm going to talk about. It helps me actually write it. It helps me decide what I'm going to focus on. It helps me with so many different things. And yes, did I use AI in the preparation of this presentation? You betcha, right? You betcha. From topic selection to emphasis to helping me organize my thoughts so that it was a lot cleaner. I use systems and automation to actually do it. So that is how you scale, my friends. It's those 3 things: group programming, using digital products to make it easier to sell to customers instead of always looking for a stranger to become a client, and then using systems and automation to stay even keel, and it's scaling the system that actually grows the business as opposed to just hustling harder and feeling like you're just going to be a burnout hot mess express. So I hope you love this. We're going to make sure that we have the recording posted inside of our Clients Over Chaos community. But before you go, there's just one thing that I'd really, really love for you to do, if you don't mind. I would love to see 2 or 3 more people in our live streams every week. And the reason why is because I do better when I know that people actually are here to learn. So if you're in friendship with people who would really benefit from the trainings that I do each week, it's absolutely free. You just have to send them to nextnumber5clients.com. That's nextnumber5clients.com. Tell your friends about this. Tell them that the training is available inside of the library. And every time you do that, it makes a huge, huge difference to the success of our community overall. So thank you so much for doing that. Next week, I'm going to be back and we're going to be talking all about, I got my notes here, the power of purpose. So one of the reasons we don't execute the way that we could is because we don't think that it matters. So if you are on purpose and in meaning and in great alignment, you will run through walls to achieve your goals. So if you've been struggling at all with like procrastination, delay, making small moves when big moves are required, that sort of thing, you're not going to want to miss next week's training. I'm so excited to be there with you. Yes, awesome. You need that? So do 3 of your friends. So do me a favor and bring 3 of your friends next week. Just give them the simple link. They can go to the events area as soon as they are a part of the Clients Over Chaos group, and they can add it to their calendar. So it's super easy to come and join us. And until then, we'll see you later. Do what matters. Have a great week.